first of all, let's talk about Ukraine and Russia, because Trump is now saying that the concession for Ukraine is that Russia's not taking, or the concession for Russia is that they don't get to take the whole country of Ukraine, and that there's another story saying Ukraine may have to cede land to Russia. This doesn't sound like a great deal for Ukraine. The more I'm looking at the peace deal, the more it looks like Ukraine's getting the bad end of the deal here.
Well, you have to remember that what Trump's philosophy of world government is, and that's power. Mm-hmm. And the Russians have much more power than the Ukrainians. So Trump is going to side with his buddy Putin. And yes, the peace treaty that he wants them to sign would cede territory, including I think it's primarily Crimea. So they've had Crimea. Russia's had Crimea since 2014. 2014. Yes. So during Obama's presidency, and they will continue to have it, and they've had it for a while. So that my guess is that that's what's going to happen. Is they're going to give up Crimea, and they will not give up the rest of the territory that Russia has conquered during this latest invasion. But we'll see. Certainly Trump is on Putin's side.
Yeah, and Trump, for his part, has said, and this is while an imperfect quote because it's not verbatim. He said Crimea has been Russian since, and they speak, he said, primarily Russian. It's been Russian since 2014, and he said that was Obama gave it to them. Trump didn't give it to them.
Right.
Nobody gave it to them, right? I mean, they took it.
Yeah.
And Obama nor Trump had anything to do with it, right? I mean, it's not. This was something that Russia decided they wanted to do. So it wasn't given by anyone or not given by anyone. It was, the American president was not consulted on this and did not draw up the plans to conquer Crimea. And I think it's important too that if it doesn't work out where Zelensky and his people agree to this as a means to an end to this conflict, it's going to hurt Ukraine too, because money will not be put in by the United States if it's Ukraine that's walking away from the deal. If it's Russia, we don't know. But if Ukraine's walking away from the deal, money will be withdrawn. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on the European Union and other NATO allies to see exactly how this is going to be navigated with the absence of the United States participation. And it's going to be, Trump said when he was leaving the White House today that he was going to possibly meet with Zelensky at Pope Francis's funeral. But we don't know if there's any truth to that at all.
And what's amazing to me is, so we've had 3.5-4 years of war in Ukraine, and how it's going to land up is the exact map that was before this terrible war with thousands of people dying. They're going to cede Crimea if Trump and Putin get their way, and it won't change the map whatsoever. There'll be all these deaths for nothing. With Russia comes in, and now they have to leave. They're gonna leave with what they had before they started this latest incursion. It just it just boggles the mind and makes you very sad that this happened.
Let's move to something happening in America, and it kind of speaks to what's happening with the Democratic Party, and that is the retirement announcement from Senator Dick Durbin.
Yeah.
Making way for the younger crowd, it looks like. Are we changing the Democratic Party so that we have new ideas, fresh vision? Is that the way of the future? Is that what's going to shake things up and what's going to get the Democrats a little bit more into play here?
Well, let me just say I hope so. And I hope he takes Schumer with him. There needs to be new leadership. It needs to be, there's lots of really good people who are moderates. I'm not talking about AOC running the Democratic Party. A although she needs to be a strong voice in the Democratic Party. But there are others who are ready to go and who are younger, not even, they're not in their 20s. They're still 50s and 60s years old. They're just not 80, and it's time for this to happen. It's time for a new president too, who's a lot younger, but we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, and I think already you're seeing the posturing. Cory Booker endorsed Brian Schatz, a senator from Hawaii, to be the next whip. I think if you're not really immersed in the business of the Senate and Congress, and you don't keep an eagle eye on it all the time, you don't realize how important the whip is in the structure of the Senate and Senate leadership, both in the minority and majority. It's basically they're the vote counters, and they can tell you what is and isn't plausible, and they can also work to tell the leadership and other members of the rank and file who needs to be influenced, who needs to be, what horses need to be traded to get a vote. So it is important. It's a very important role, even if it's not the sexiest outwardly. And I think Durbin is doing what a lot of politicians should do and say, I'm of a certain age. We need to move on. I need to pass the baton. And I'm also thinking that if Dick Durbin was a Democrat from a purple state, he might run again because the power of incumbency is so strong, but we didn't see that work with Bob Casey this time, so it wouldn't have been certain anyway. I think he's tired and wants to move on, and I think giving it to Brian Schatz is, if that's who ends up getting it, there'll be a race for it. Again, these people are not going to be the new leadership isn't going to be there until after the 2026 election, so Dick Durbin's still there, but I think this is a good sign that Democrats are doing what they need to do to change the face of their party.
The other person that they're looking at is Chris Murphy, too, from Connecticut, who's a pretty strong candidate, although, as Michael says, he may have higher ambitions to be president.
He does, and he might want to be Senate leader. If Schumer steps down, he could run for that. And Schatz and Murphy are very, very close friends. They're not two people that I would see running against one another. So I think that all of this is done with a little bit of a wink and a nod. They have a very close relationship, the two of them.
And what's interesting, Kim, is that we can sit here and talk about this for 20 minutes, but the viewers and the listeners out there, they don't know who any of these people are.
Oh, I think they do. This is a crowd who knows. We
Well,
know our
maybe
politicians.
this crowd, but
yeah.
do they know who Chris Murphy is? Do they know who Schatz is from Hawaii?
Well, this crowd, the people in this on the Mark Thompson show know who all these people are. But I would argue, Jim, that most people don't know who Dick Durbin is, and he's been the majority whip for a very long time, since the early 2000s. So
the general public doesn't really care about this inside baseball stuff that much.
I don't know, because inside baseball seems to be getting a little more interesting in this whole David Hogg thing, where he's this 25-year-old guy who's involved in Democratic politics, and his idea is to give a challenge to these people that have held these seats forever. Maybe Dick Durbin saw the writing on the wall, right? When it comes to trying to pry these people that are in these safe districts and they have been here forever, but they're really not shaking up the party. They're really not infusing it with fresh ideas. And he thinks that in order to remake the Democratic Party, which lost last time, that we need to shake things up and get this done. Other people think, hey, save your money and spend it on defeating Republicans, not defeating Democrats. So what are your thoughts on this?
The machine in Illinois, I mean, having worked in Chicago for 3 decades or 2 decades.
And gotten a free hat along the line.
Gotten a free hat along the line wearing the Cubs hat. The Democratic Party machine in Illinois, in Chicago, if Dick Durbin wanted to stay, he would have stayed, because he is part of that machine politics there. So I don't think there would have been a revolution that really would have shaken up the Democratic Party in Illinois. Now, other places, as you point out, Kim, that may be true, where progressives are gaining some power, but Illinois politics is pretty stable and pretty down the middle. And there isn't a Republican who gets elected there. It's all
Like San Francisco, there's no way Nancy Pelosi doesn't get elected if she runs again.
right.
Yeah.
Well, except she's running against somebody this time who the party is taking pretty seriously. But I agree with you. I think that those things do change. I mean, people have lost races that you don't think they can run. I'm not just Joe Crowley in New York, who was part of House leadership and lost to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but Tom Daschle lost when he was the majority leader of the Senate, and
What about the guy from Virginia? What was his name?
Eric Cantor.
Eric
Cantor lost to Dave Bratt, and then George Nethercutt in Washington beat the Speaker of the House. And why am I not thinking of the Speaker of the House? But he did beat him. Who was the Speaker of the House from Washington? Jim?
Don't know.
Why am I forgetting? Come on, see, you said nobody else knows, so these are the things you're supposed to know.
I know.
But these things do happen, and I think that it's a serious a way of looking at it. And also J.B. Pritzker, who's the governor of Illinois, is also looked at as a possible presidential candidate. Yeah. And I think that's another important thing to look at. So again, Illinois is Illinois. Tom Foley.
Okay. Let's move on to our friend Pete Hegseth.
I didn't know there would be a test, by the way, today.
There's a test.
I should have asked you to prepare. But Tom Foley was Speaker of the House and lost a House race. I mean, come on, this stuff can happen. But let's cede to Kim now.
Yeah, Mr. Hegseth, he not only was using Signal on his cell phone, but apparently now there's a story that he asked for it to be this program, which is a non-secure texting platform, although more secure than the text program most of us use on our phones, is not worthy of secure communications from the Pentagon. But he asked for it to be put onto his computer at the Pentagon, which was connected to something called a dirty line, which is just a regular line out into the world to the internet. It's not secure. It doesn't have to be, it hasn't been sanitized by Pentagon security folks. So here he's got Signal put onto the PC on his desk at the Pentagon, and who knows what he's using it for. Meanwhile, at the same time, he's so upset about leaks and information getting out that he freaked out at the Pentagon, and he's shouting that he's going to polygraph top military officials to find out, where all the leaks are coming from. And it looks like that Pete Hegseth is imploding. We had a report this week from NPR that the Trump administration, while not admitting it publicly, is shopping around for a replacement for him already. Are Pete Hegseth's days as the top Pentagon leader numbered? Fellas,
well,
whichever one.
The easy answer is yes, because they're always, every coach is hired to be fired. But I think that his days have fewer numbers because of all of this, and because one thing that Trump takes seriously on the surface, not in an in-depth kind of way, are the opinions of generals. And if he starts to lose the military higher-ups, Hegseth starts to lose those military higher-ups, Trump will give in to that. And I think sometimes with Donald Trump, he feels he's done his job enough by nominating someone or giving them the chance, and that if he doesn't stick with them later on because of some kind of trouble they've gotten in, he feels like he's done his part. And I think that may be the case with Pete Hegseth. So I would not be surprised to see him go. I don't think it's going to be for this reason, but I think it's going to be for the enduring attention that he will get for something else, and that will be then cumulative to this and make it so that it's really impossible for him to stay because he loses the faith of the top generals.
I think the only reason why he hasn't been dumped yet is that Trump is haunted by his first term, when he when there was a rapid turnover of all of his cabinet members, and that was embarrassing to him because people kept saying, "Well, you picked the best people, I thought, and then you're letting them go." So this time he around, even though the defense secretary would have been gone in the past, he's holding on to him and not wanting to make any of those big moves. He's got enough trouble with tariffs. He doesn't need to do this. He's backtracking on everything that he's done practically, and another backtrack on who the defense secretary is not going to look good.
Here you've got a guy who, as we knew during the confirmation process, it came out that he was in charge of a couple of nonprofits, and even they had to get rid of him because he was horrible at running these agencies. It feels like we were warned. We had the information we needed about this guy. And is anyone really surprised that it has worked out poorly?
Well, it's not that we were warned. We knew this without warning. We knew that this is not the job for someone who's a talking head on television who had, a minuscule amount of experience. This is the Secretary of Defense. This is the person running the Pentagon. It's the biggest office building in the world, but it's also the biggest, one of the biggest jobs within an administration. I think now the biggest, because the State Department has been pared down so much. So I think it's the Republican senators who were warned, and the Republican senators who could have confirmed him, who didn't have to confirm him, because if the thing that you have to remember with confirming somebody like Hegseth, you're going to get someone else you like who's going to be better than Pete Hegseth. If Hegseth doesn't get confirmed, the president will nominate somebody else who you like, who maybe others don't, but will be better at the job, and presumably, and that's what's so confounding about a lot of these Republicans who really, off the record, would not have wanted Pete Hegseth to be the Secretary of Defense, yet they went along and voted for him.
We're kind of lucky that the deep state is running the Pentagon right now.
Well, that's true. Yeah. As we've been since Biden stole the election, Jim.
But Hegseth is not running. I mean, he's a figurehead. He's a talking head. He installed the makeup room at the Pentagon, so he looks good on television. That's pretty much why President Trump picked him. He's doing that part. He's the face of the Pentagon. He's kind of screwed things up, but the people really running the Pentagon and making sure that these airstrikes and everything else go smoothly are the deep state people who have been there for a while, who are generals, who are non-political. And fortunately, we still have those type of folks in place.
Well, it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence when you see what a bumbling stooge he is on the outside. You wonder what kind of scandals are going on the inside that we haven't heard about yet. And I
think you'll hear about him, Kim, if they
are. And that's what I was saying earlier. There's going to be something else that just adds on to this in a cumulative way, and that's what I think is going to happen with him.
I mean, he has invited leaks at this point. He's invited people to, because he's weak and on the edge of being fired, people who want him gone are gonna leak something that's gonna push him over the edge.
Let's move to immigration. It turns out, speaking of bumbling stooges, agents that went to arrest this activist at Columbia, Mahmoud Khalil, they didn't have a warrant for his arrest. They didn't have the proper documentation that usually one would have if they're going to arrest someone. They are calling it a warrantless arrest of this Columbia University student. They say agents were afraid that he would flee because he said that he was going to leave the scene. And so regardless of whether they had an arrest warrant or not, they just took this guy into custody.
Well, here's what I have to say about that, is that the government is out of control, and some of it seems funny. They're stooges and they mess things up. But what's going on in this country is actually quite scary. Today, federal agents, FBI agents, or actually it was yesterday, we found out about it today, arrested a judge in Wisconsin and put her into custody because she would not tell them where an immigrant appearing before her was, and he escaped, or at least he ran down the street, and then the FBI agents or marshals actually caught up with him down the street.
Tell me you don't watch the entire Mark Thompson show without telling me you don't watch the entire Mark Thompson show.
Oh, did you already do this?
Yeah, but that's okay. Carry on,
did,
because
but
we didn't hear your
it's
opinion.
very,
on it.
very appropriate. I'm just giving you grief.
I mean, I just think that that it's a example of why we should be legitimately afraid that these are genuine steps toward dictatorship, and we may be there already. He is already doing things through an executive order that he has no right to do, and the courts are slapping him down time after time. But what's his reaction going to be to that? Is he going to follow what the courts are saying, or is there going to be a true constitutional crisis, which I would say we're already in?
Yeah, thus far he is not following what the courts are saying, and he and his administration are trying to find ways not to. And just to reiterate what we did talk about earlier, it's the part of what happened in Milwaukee is that you have federal agents going into a local jurisdiction to arrest a judge who has the autonomy to do her job, but not the autonomy that was given to her by that position to be a judge and to adjudicate. And if they don't like what she's doing, that's one thing, right? They can go in there, they can try and put another case before it, they can challenge it, they can have it go to an upper court, they can look at her. Or they could appeal it, right? Or if they think that she really was, there was something egregious about what she did, they could call for some kind of a judicial review and find that out. But this was such overreach and such overstepping that if there aren't consequences, it will get worse. I reminded viewers, Jim, earlier that we're 3 months into this show. Just a little over 3 months, and there are a lot of 3-month blocks to go, and that's frightening. And hopefully the train gets a little tired. I want to point out 2 donations that were given today. Vilma Devlin, $4.99. Thanks so much. Trump wants to raise fear in every facet of our society. I think that's what Vilma was probably referencing during the conversation about Judge Dugan in Milwaukee. And then Noe Marie Clarity giving a donation of $2, saying we know them all. I'm guessing that is a response to Jim saying that nobody knows who Brian Schatz and Chris Murphy are. But then, to his credit, Jim came out and said, I don't know much about Brian Schatz.
Well, Jim also referenced that Trump is getting slapped down by courts. And it seems like maybe there's a response to that. Today, we understand the federal government is reversing course when it comes to their plan to terminate the legal status of international students that are here in the United States to study, because so many court challenges have been filed against the Trump administration because of this. So now they're saying, okay, maybe we'll let the international students stay after all.
Yeah, I mean, they're pulling back on all kinds of things. The other thing they pulled back on today was the student loan business. They were calling back student loans, and now they say we're not going to do that. We're going to let that happen. So, I don't know if it's just that they shoot first and ask questions later is what's going on. Is that they're not really studying what they want to do, and then they find out once they do it that either it doesn't work or the courts are going to slap them down. It really is getting embarrassing that they are trying all these autocratic moves and are getting slapped down. They're not researching it. It's a combination of ineptitude and authoritarianism that is not working.
Let me throw another log on the fire here. 2 federal judges in 2 different states are blocking Trump's efforts to ban this whole DEI thing from K-12 education. They're saying you cannot withhold money from school districts simply because of DEI policies. It's happened in New Hampshire now, after rulings in a different state, that you cannot use federal funding to end DEI initiatives within public schools. You would think that Trump has enough lawyers that he would have seen this coming as well.
Well,
yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead, Michael.
No. I was saying that you would think. I think this goes to what Jim was saying earlier about, shoot first and ask questions later. They created this chaos that they. First of all, it's impossible to sustain the chaos. And I think you're starting to see it wane a little bit. And maybe it's because the president's being called onto the national or international stage a little bit. And so he is doing his own chaos and his own, obviously, lying over China and Russia right now. But I think that when you put all this chaos out there and you have to start answering for it. And the answers have been coming from the courts, and those when people see something as unconstitutional, or you arrest somebody without a warrant, or you go into a courtroom and arrest a judge for her demeanor and behavior around a certain case on the same day that you're saying, well, we're going to also pull back from arresting students that are overstaying their visas or not, right? Students who are here internationally, we're going to stop any kind of deportation of them just because they're international students. I think that the courts are starting to do their job. And what Jim brought up earlier, which is so important, is what happens now. If you don't abide by this, then you are creating constitutional crisis. What you're seeing in some of these cases is the administration saying, "Yeah, I guess we didn't win that one. We can't do that. We can't do this on student loans. We can't do this on foreign students. So we'll try other things, see what sticks. And when they don't stick, we'll say we can't do it, and we'll move on to the next thing."
There's a man in Florida. He's the top Democrat in the Florida State Senate. His name is Jason Pizzo, Pizzo. Pizzo. And Jason says the Democratic Party is dead. It's dead. And so Jason Pizzo has now decided to change his party affiliation to become and register as an independent, because he says that we have an issue. He said we are players, or perhaps props, in the mess that is bottom partisanship. He said, "I think stripping myself of the title of the party designation allows me to run free and clear, clean and transparent, and help many, many more people." What do you think of that?
Well,
okay.
I don't think the Democratic Party is dead. We also.
But I think he was saying. I think, in fairness to Pizzo, is that he was saying in Florida, he was talking about the Democratic Party in Florida being dead.
It's maybe on his last breaths in Florida, but in general, we can't overreact because of the last election. Let's wait till the midterms. Let's see what happens there. That's going to be very important. Nobody's going to win, Democrats not going to win in Florida. I don't think an independent's going to win in Florida. It's going to be a Republican. I just don't think we need to panic. We need to organize, and the Democratic Party needs to organize, get ahead. Some people are beginning to emerge. Cory Booker is emerging as a leading spokesperson for the Democratic Party. And another wing, Gavin Newsom is. AOC, Bernie Sanders. There's some strong people. Pritzker in the Midwest as a moderate. Those folks, and Shapiro in Pennsylvania. That's a pretty strong, if you had a primary right now and you had a bunch of these guys lined up for a debate, that's a pretty strong list of people. So that doesn't even, Murphy is not in, and Murphy's in there. So, especially with Trump's approval ratings just falling like crazy, way down in the 40s, there's no reason for the Democratic Party just to fade away and go away. It just needs to get behind some people, and they are.
Yesterday,
I'm a little bit more of a skeptic about the strong bench. I think one person emerges in recent history. I don't think Barack Obama was on a strong bench in 2008. He was a 2-year senator who had come from being in the Florida legislature. So but I do think that having a strong party is important. I do think that a lot of the names that Jim just mentioned prove that the Democratic Party nationally is inches away from, being a national party and taking control of some of government anyway. And so I when you look at what Pizzo did, first of all, Pizzo in Florida is talking about the party specifically, as I said, but he also wants to be governor. And the Democratic brand in Florida is not at its best right now. And if he wants to run with no party affiliation for governor of Florida, that could be a better path for him, although it never really works out for third-party candidates unless the Republicans get behind him, even with no party affiliation.
There's something else going on when it comes to the Democratic Party, and this is that Trump is now launching a Department of Justice investigation into ActBlue, which is the vehicle for fundraising for Democrats. And he is now saying he wants the DOJ to investigate ActBlue. It's being called the latest attack by Republicans and Trump and targeting his political opponents. And he's not backing down on this one. The ActBlue, they send me emails all the time. They're trying to fundraise. And so I think if ActBlue goes away, the Democrats could be in some trouble here.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to go away.
This has been going on for a little while.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to go away. The posturing for this has gone on for a little while. And the fact that they're doing it now, I think might help ActBlue,
They're saying that there's illegal straw donations and dummy accounts and contributions from foreigners. And so that's why they're upset. Maybe it's that ActBlue is a little too successful. Their fundraising efforts are too successful, and that's why they're being targeted. Jim Avila?
Yeah, I think
right. And I believe
it's actually going to help their fundraising. Okay, they're going to send out an email.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Mm-hmm. And say we're under attack from Trump. Please donate, and they're going to get a lot of money. Well, you can see it right there. They're getting lots of money. So I think that's going to backfire. Unless and the problem is though a threat from Trump may become reality. This is not. He's not. He is not bound by any either democratic norms with a small d or any laws, and now with the Supreme Court giving him immunity for anything he acts as a president on, he can say that he's protecting the election, and close them down, and there's nothing that anybody can do about it. So, I laugh at what he's doing right now, but I fear what he's going to do in the future.
Yep. Last thing I wanted to ask you guys about before we wrap up this week in politics with Michael Shure and Jim Avila is everything that happened this week with Elon Musk. The announcement that profits or earnings at Tesla have dropped 71%. And then Musk saying, maybe I'll just go to 1 or 2 days a week with the whole Doge thing and really refocus my efforts on Tesla. And now we see that more than 50 House Democrats are demanding answers after a whistleblower report came out on Doge as well. Elon Musk not having a good week, you guys.
Yeah, couldn't happen.
No, and he doesn't appear as someone who right. He isn't someone you generally think of as having a bad week because he seems sort of unflappable about bad weeks. But this is and this. To me, I don't know that Doge is sustainable without his, frontman status. I don't know who, unless Hegseth gets Doge when he leaves the Defense Department.
Right, and then he needs to be there to whisper into Trump's ear like he's doing there in that picture because, that's the only reason why it's going on. He has reduced the amount of money that he said he's going to save from $1 trillion down to $1 million or so, $1 billion or so. It's been, when you look at it objectively, it's been pretty much a failure what Doge has done. Could Trump have gone in and with a scalpel taken out waste and abuse in the agencies? Yeah, he could have, but he didn't do it that way. And they landed up making moves that cost them both in the public's eye because they were embarrassing, such as closing down the guys who were in charge of the nuclear codes. That was kind of an embarrassment. And then the courts ordering him to hire everybody back that he fired. the closing of USAID is one of the most important things that he has done, and one of the most detrimental things that Trump has done. That was our propaganda around the world, where it was to combat Russia and China, and now we don't have that goodwill. And Africa, the growing place, the place that is going to be, that has going to have all the power in the future, and we're losing influence there because we have cut off aid in midstream, where these people are now dying. Babies are dying because of
Imagine if Jimmy Carter were still alive and knew what was going on with cutting aid to Africa. It's extraordinary in the year that we remembered him. So
I was reading a story about more cuts at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. They have one of the world-renowned abilities to forecast weather. It's this collaboration that is one of the best in the world, and it could hurt our economy if it's cut, and they're cutting it. And this is something that farmers use, right? This is something that we base business on, these weather forecasting models that we're the best in the world at doing, and it's on the chopping block as well. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of thought process, that someone didn't sit down ahead of time and say, what happens if we do this? I try to teach my son this phrase: if I do this, what will happen? Because he has a little issue with impulse control, right? Not thinking things through. So if I do this, let's extrapolate. What are all the things that could go wrong? What dominoes could fall if I make this choice?
He's 36.
No one is doing that at the White House. If I cut this weather forecasting tool, could that have an effect on the economy, right? If I cut USAID, could people die? Who are they? How many? Can we afford to keep it? No one is asking the hard questions. They just act, and then we're in trouble. And then they have to.
Medical research is also very scary.
Firing people, having to rehire people. The decision-making process is flawed.
Yeah, I mean, I live in San Diego at UCSD. They're saying they're cutting 3/4 of their research because they're not getting the money for it. UCLA, same thing. So
I have a friend who works for the School of Health in North Carolina, and same thing. They're terrified because that's what they do, right? And not only that, they're arresting people who are working, or detaining people who are working towards cures for diseases.
Right.
They're so sidetracked by this, right? And meanwhile, the price of eggs stays where it is, and that was his big problem. Harry Magnan, thank you for giving $5 to the show and saying, I love the Jim and Michael show. Right?
I love it too.
The Michael and Jim show, but thanks. We love it, Harry, and thank you for being so generous with the show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.